I haven't heard that voice in 12 years, Daniel whispered, his hands trembling as he stared at the woman he'd just pulled to safety. The streetlight illuminated her face, older now, lined with experience, but unmistakably her. The same woman who had walked out of his life, leaving him alone with their newborn daughter. "Rebecca," he managed, his voice barely audible above the distant police sirens. Her eyes widened in recognition, and in that moment, everything he'd built, every wall he'd constructed around his heart, threatened to collapse. If this story of unexpected reunions and second chances touched something in you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that remind us how fate works in mysterious ways, connecting our past to our present when we least expect it. Daniel Foster had never considered himself a hero. At 38, his life revolved around two things: his software engineering job that paid the bills and his 11-year-old daughter, Sophie, who gave his life meaning. Everything else, including his own needs and desires, had been pushed to the background years ago when he'd become an unexpected single father. That Tuesday evening had begun like any other. Daniel had picked up Sophie from her after-school program, made dinner, spaghetti, one of the few meals he could cook without disaster, and helped her with math homework. By 8 o'clock, Sophie was engrossed in a book, and Daniel realized they were out of milk for breakfast. "I'm running to the corner store," he told Sophie, grabbing his wallet and keys. "Lock the door behind me. I'll be back in 10 minutes. Can I have ice cream?" Sophie asked without looking up from her book, her dark curls falling across her face in a way that always reminded Daniel of her mother. "Nice try." "School night," he replied, dropping a kiss on the top of her head. "Mrs. Rodriguez is next door if you need anything." The convenience store was only 2 blocks from their apartment in the quiet Chicago neighborhood Daniel had chosen specifically for its safety and good schools. He'd lived in the area for 7 years now, knew most of the shopkeepers by name, and had never felt unsafe walking its streets, even after dark. The store was empty except for Raj, the owner, who greeted Daniel with a familiar nod. "The usual late-night milk run?" Daniel smiled, heading for the refrigerated section. "Sophie will have my head if there's no milk for cereal tomorrow." He was at the counter paying when the bell above the door jingled. Daniel didn't turn around immediately, busy counting out exact change, but he noticed how Raj's expression shifted from friendly to wary. "Can I help you?" Raj asked, his voice unnaturally tight. That's when Daniel heard it, the unmistakable sound of a gun being cocked. "Empty the register. Now." The voice was young, male, shaking with either fear or drugs or both. Daniel turned slowly. The robber was barely more than a teenager, wearing a dark hoodie pulled low over his face, pointing a small handgun that looked too big for his trembling hands. Behind him, a woman had frozen in the doorway, her hand still on the door handle, eyes wide with fear. "I said empty it." The kid's voice rose an octave as he jabbed the gun toward Raj. Okay, Raj said calmly, opening the register. "Take it easy." Daniel's mind raced. The kid was clearly inexperienced, nervous. Dangerous. His eyes darted between Raj, the gun, and the woman by the door who seemed paralyzed with fear. She was in her late 30s, with shoulder-length brown hair, dressed in business attire, probably heading home from work. Their eyes met briefly, and Daniel gave a small shake of his head, silently urging her not to run. "Hurry up." The robber shouted at Raj, who was methodically placing bills on the counter. "Look," Daniel said quietly, drawing the kid's attention. "He's giving you the money. No one needs to get hurt." The gun swung toward him. "Shut up. Don't move." "I'm not moving," Daniel said, keeping his voice steady despite his pounding heart. All he could think about was Sophie waiting at home, expecting him back in minutes. Sophie, who had already lost one parent and couldn't lose another. The woman by the door shifted slightly, and the robber's attention snapped to her. "Get over here. Now." She took a hesitant step forward, her purse clutched tightly against her chest. Your purse too. Throw it here. As she moved to comply, her foot caught on the edge of a display stand. She stumbled, and several cans crashed to the floor with a deafening clatter. The noise startled the young robber. His finger twitched on the trigger, and the gun went off with a crack that seemed to shake the entire store. Daniel didn't think. He lunged forward, tackling the kid to the ground as the woman screamed. They struggled briefly, but Daniel had the advantage of size and desperation. He pinned the boy's wrist to the floor until the gun clattered free, then held him down while Raj called 911. Only when the danger had passed did Daniel notice the pain in his upper arm. The bullet had grazed him, leaving a bloody furrow across his bicep. "You're hurt," the woman said, suddenly beside him. She had removed her scarf and was pressing it against his wound. "Hold still." Daniel looked up at her then, really looked at her for the first time, and felt the world tilt beneath him. There was something hauntingly familiar about her face, the shape of her eyes, the curve of her mouth, the small mole just below her right ear. Before he could process this, police sirens wailed outside, and moments later, officers flooded the store. Everything became a blur of questions, statements, and paramedics examining his arm. The young robber was handcuffed and led away, looking younger and more terrified than ever. "It's not deep," a paramedic told Daniel about his wound. "But you should get it properly cleaned and dressed at the hospital." "I can't," Daniel said immediately. "My daughter's home alone. I need to get back to her." "I can take you," the woman offered unexpectedly. She had given her statement to the police and was standing nearby, her business suit stained with his blood. "To check on your daughter and then to the hospital. It's the least I can do." Daniel hesitated. There was still something about her that nagged at him, something he couldn't quite place. But his arm was throbbing, and all he could think about was getting back to Sophie. "Thank you," he said finally. "That would help a lot." They walked the 2 blocks to his apartment in silence, the woman matching her pace to his. Daniel felt lightheaded, whether from blood loss or the adrenaline crash, he wasn't sure. "I'm Daniel, by the way," he said as they approached his building. She began, then stopped, a strange expression crossing her face. "I'm Rebecca." Daniel froze, his key halfway to the lock. "Rebecca. It couldn't be. And yet. I haven't heard that voice in 12 years, he whispered, his hands trembling as he stared at the woman he'd just pulled to safety. The streetlight illuminated her face, older now, lined with experience, but unmistakably her. The same woman who had walked out of his life, leaving him alone with their newborn daughter. "Rebecca," he managed, his voice barely audible above the distant police sirens. Her eyes widened in recognition, and in that moment, everything he'd built, every wall he'd constructed around his heart, threatened to collapse. "Daniel," she breathed. "Oh my God. I didn't recognize you at first. It's been so long, and the store was dark, and everything happened so fast." 1,000 questions flooded his mind, but before he could voice any of them, the apartment door flew open. "Dad! What took so long?" "I was worried," Sophie stopped mid-sentence, her eyes taking in the blood on his sleeve, the police cars visible down the street, and the strange woman standing beside him. "What happened? Are you okay?" Daniel forced a reassuring smile. "I'm fine, sweetheart. There was a little trouble at the store, but everything's okay now. This is someone who helped me." Rebecca stared at Sophie, her face draining of color. The resemblance was unmistakable, the same dark curls, the same determined chin, the same questioning gaze. "Sophie," Daniel said, his throat tight, "I need to go to the hospital to get my arm looked at." "This is Rebecca. She's offered to drive me." Sophie looked suspiciously at Rebecca. "I'm coming too." "Of course," Daniel said quickly. "Go grab your jacket." As Sophie disappeared back into the apartment, an uncomfortable silence fell between Daniel and Rebecca. "She's beautiful," Rebecca finally whispered. "She looks just like you." "She has your eyes," Daniel replied automatically, then immediately regretted it when he saw the pain flash across Rebecca's face. "Daniel, Not now," he cut her off, his voice low and urgent as Sophie reappeared with her jacket. "Not in front of her." The drive to the hospital was tense, filled with Sophie's questions about the robbery and Daniel's carefully edited answers. Rebecca remained silent, her knuckles white on the steering wheel, occasionally glancing at Sophie in the rearview mirror with an expression Daniel couldn't decipher. At the hospital, they sat in the waiting room while Daniel's wound was cleaned and bandaged. Sophie eventually dozed off, her head resting against Daniel's good arm, exhausted by the late hour and the excitement. "She doesn't know about me, does she?" Rebecca asked quietly, watching Sophie sleep. Daniel shook his head. "What was I supposed to tell her? That her mother decided a baby and a husband weren't what she wanted after all? That she left without even saying goodbye?" Rebecca flinched. "I deserve that." "What are you even doing here, Rebecca? In Chicago? Last I heard, you were in California, building your career." "I moved back 6 months ago," she said. "I took a position with a law firm downtown." She hesitated, then added, "I've thought about reaching out to you so many times, but I didn't know if you'd want to hear from me. If she would want to know me." Daniel looked down at his sleeping daughter, his heart aching with the weight of secrets kept and truths withheld. "I don't know what you want from me now, Rebecca. It's been 12 years. We've built a life without you." "I know," she whispered. "I know I have no right to ask anything. But seeing her tonight. Daniel, I've made so many mistakes. Walking away from you both was the worst one." Before Daniel could respond, a nurse called his name. By the time he returned with his arm properly bandaged, Sophie was awake again, yawning but alert. "Can we go home now, Dad?" she asked. "Yes, sweetheart. Rebecca will drive us." The ride back to their apartment was silent, each lost in their own thoughts. When they arrived, Daniel hesitated, then turned to Rebecca. "Would you like to come up for a cup of coffee? I think we need to talk." Rebecca nodded, relief and apprehension mingling in her expression. Once inside, Daniel sent Sophie to get ready for bed, promising to check on her in a few minutes. When she was out of earshot, he turned to Rebecca, who stood awkwardly in the middle of his living room, looking at the photos on the walls, Sophie at various ages, always with Daniel, never with a mother. "Why now, Rebecca?" he asked quietly. "After all this time?" She took a deep breath. "I've been in therapy for the past 3 years. Working through a lot of things. My postpartum depression, which I never acknowledged back then. My fear of turning into my own mother. My career obsession that I used to run away from my feelings." She met his gaze directly. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, Daniel. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that it was never about not loving you or not loving her. It was about not knowing how to love myself." Daniel sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. "Do you have any idea what it was like? Being left alone with a newborn? Having to explain to my parents, to our friends, that you were gone? Trying to figure out how to be both mother and father to a little girl who deserved so much better?" "No," Rebecca admitted, her voice breaking. "I can't imagine. And I hate myself for putting you through that. I don't want your self-hatred, Rebecca. It doesn't help me, and it certainly doesn't help Sophie." "What can I do?" she asked simply. "Tell me what you want me to do, and I'll do it." Daniel ran his hand through his hair, wincing as the movement pulled at his injured arm. "I don't know. This is a lot to process. Especially tonight, after everything else." "Dad?" Sophie's voice came from the hallway. She stood in her pajamas, her hair damp from the shower, looking uncertainly between the adults. Is everything okay? Yes, honey, Daniel assured her. Everything's fine. Rebecca and I are just talking about some grown-up stuff. Sophie frowned, studying Rebecca with newfound intensity. You look familiar. Have we met before? Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. No, sweetheart. We haven't had the pleasure. Sophie, it's late, Daniel interjected. Say goodnight to Rebecca and I'll come tuck you in. After Sophie had reluctantly gone to her room, Daniel turned back to Rebecca. I need time to think about this. About what it means for Sophie. She's my priority, she has to be. Of course, Rebecca nodded. She should be. I would never want to disrupt her life or confuse her. She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. My number. When, if, you want to talk more. Daniel took the card, their fingers brushing briefly. Thank you for your help tonight. With the robber, and driving us. It was the least I could do, she said softly. You saved my life, Daniel. Again. After she left, Daniel went to Sophie's room. She was still awake, her bedside lamp casting a warm glow across her curious face. Who is she really, Dad? Sophie asked as he sat on the edge of her bed. That lady, Rebecca. You knew each other before tonight, didn't you? Daniel sighed. His daughter had always been perceptive, too smart for easy deceptions. Yes, we did. A long time ago. Is she an old girlfriend? Something like that, Daniel hedged. It's complicated, Sophie Bear. Sophie considered this. Is she why you never date anyone? Because you're still in love with her? The question caught Daniel off guard. What makes you think I never date? Sophie rolled her eyes with all the exasperation an 11-year-old could muster. Dad, please. I'm not a baby. You never go out except for work and my stuff. Grandma's always trying to set you up with her friends' daughters. And you always say no. Daniel smiled despite himself. You notice a lot, don't you? So? Sophie persisted. Is it because of her? Daniel considered how to answer. He had always tried to be honest with Sophie, even when the truth was difficult. No, honey. It's not because of Rebecca. It's because I've been focused on you, on us. On making sure you have everything you need. But what about what you need? Sophie asked, her young face suddenly serious. Don't you get lonely? Daniel's throat tightened with emotion. I have you. How could I be lonely? Sophie wasn't fooled. That's not the same, Dad. I'm going to grow up someday. Then what will you do? Worry about you from a distance, he suggested lightly. Sophie didn't smile. I think you should talk to her again. Rebecca. She looked at you like you were something she lost and really wanted back. Daniel tucked the blanket around his daughter, marveling at her insight. When did you get so wise about relationships? I watch TV, she said with a shrug. And Grandma talks a lot. Daniel laughed softly. That she does. Now go to sleep, wise one. You still have school tomorrow. But as he turned out the light and closed Sophie's door, Daniel found himself thinking about Rebecca's card in his pocket, and the look in her eyes when she'd seen Sophie, a mixture of longing, regret, and something that might have been hope.